In this video, I'll be showing you how I made a vision board for 2024 in Notion. It's the perfect time to set new goals for the coming year, and I think I've come up with the perfect system. So here is the vision board that I've set up. So these are all of the goals that I've set for the coming year, and they are grouped together based on the quarter of the year that they fall into. You'll also see some details about the goal on the card. So as you can see here, this is the deadline for the goal, and I've set up this formula that will count down how many days there are to go until the goal. And one of the things that I love about this is that if the date has now passed, this will change to tell you how many days overdue the goal is. So I've just changed it to a past date, so as you can see, it now tells me that the goal is 4 days overdue. You can also mark the goal as complete once you've achieved it, and you can also set which category of your life this falls into. If you click on the individual goal, I've also added a space where you can actually plan out how you're going to achieve the goal, and you can check these off as you go. So now that I've shown you how the vision board works, next I'm going to show you step by step how to set this up for yourself. So we are starting off with a blank Notion page. I've just named this page vision board. I've added an icon here, and I've just added a plain cover photo as well, as you can see. So the first thing we're going to do is just make this page full width. So I'm just going to go up here into the corner, click on the 3 dots and select this full width option, and that's just going to give us a little bit more space on the page so we can add more onto here. And the next thing we're going to do is add in our database. So I'm going to type in /database and select database in line, and I'm just going to name this one vision board. I'm also just going to click on the 3 dots here and just hide the database title, and we're also going to delete this default tags property as well because it's not something that we need. Okay, so this is now what we're left with. Now this first column we're actually just going to rename, so instead of name I'm going to call it goal, and this is where we're going to input the name of our goal. So I'm just going to put one in here as an example, and I'm just going to delete these 2 rows for now. Now I actually want a default icon to appear for every single goal that I add into the system. So to add a default icon, we're just going to go here and click on this little arrow here and select new template, and the only thing I'm going to add to this template for now is just an icon. So I'm going to click add icon. That's just going to add one at random, and I'm just going to click on Notion's icon library, but feel free to use an emoji if you prefer. And let's just type in target, and I'm just going to go with this target here with the arrow. So this is going to be our icon. So after you've added the icon, you don't want to add anything else to this page. We're just going to click back, and again just clicking on this arrow. Here is the untitled template that we've just added with the target icon. So I'm just going to click on the 3 dots and set that one as default, and you want to select for all views in our vision board. So what that's now done is anytime I add a new goal, so let me just add another one as an example, and when you hit enter, it will automatically add that icon for you. Now for any that you've already added into the system, it won't automatically go back and add it, so you will just need to add that. So I'm just going to open up this page, but I can actually just select that template here, and that will just add the icon for that one that we already added. So I'm just going to add a few more goals into the system so that we have a little bit more data to work with. So now that we have some goals, we're now going to add a deadline for each goal. So I'm going to click on this plus symbol here to add another property, and this one is going to be a date property. Select this one, and I'm going to name this one deadline. And we're just going to leave all of these settings the same. So now if you just click on this box, it will bring up a calendar, so you can just select the deadline. So for this one, I'm just going to select the last day in January. So I'm going to select this one, and that will just add it into the box. So I'm just going to select a date here for every single one of the goals. And I am just going to vary the dates throughout the year. So I don't want to set them all just for the end of December. I want to have different goals that I can work on throughout the year. Okay, so these are all filled out now. So this is the date by which I want to have achieved this goal. So just before we jump back into the tutorial, I just want to mention that my new Second Brain template is now available on my store. It's a super advanced all-in-one productivity system. I'll leave a link in the description box below if you're interested. So that's all, back to the tutorial. Now, if you remember in the example, I did have all of the goals sorted based on the quarter of the year that they fall into. So now we're going to set up a formula that's going to automatically work out which quarter of the year each of these goals falls into based on the deadline property here. So that's actually going to be a formula property. So we're going to click on the plus symbol to add a new property, and this one's going to be a formula, and we're just going to call this one quarter. And I'm going to click on this formula edit button here to bring up this panel where we can actually type in our formula. So the formula itself is actually pretty simple. We're going to use the format date property. So I'm going to type in format date like this. If you start typing it, it will then appear here in the sidebar. So I'm just going to select it. So the format date property is pretty simple. It just formats a date for you, and you can actually select what part of the date you want to format. So in this case, we're actually just going to format the quarter. So the first thing we need to do is tell it which date we want it to format. So we actually need to select that deadline property from our table. So if you look here in the sidebar, it will list all of the properties that you've added into the database. So here is our deadline property. So I'm just going to click on that, and it's going to add it into our formula. We're then going to add a comma and 2 quotation marks like this. And inside these quotation marks, we're going to tell it what exactly we want it to display. So in Notion, if you type a Q like this means that you want it to display the quarter. So this is the formula we're going to use, and I'm just going to click done. And if we have a look now at the database, as you can see, this quarter formula is displaying a number next to each of the goals, and it does correspond to the quarter of the year that the goal falls into. The next property that we're going to add is the countdown property, which will count down the days until a goal, and it will also tell you how many days overdue a goal is if the due date is passed. So that again is a formula. So I'm going to add another property, and it's going to be a formula property. And this one we are going to name countdown. And I'm just going to click on the formula edit button to bring up the panel where we can actually type in our formula. So we're actually going to be using the if function to make this work. So if you are familiar with Excel formulas, then you may already understand how an if statement works. So it's essentially like saying if a condition is true, then we want to display one thing, but if that condition is false, then we will display something else. So let's start by adding that into our formula. So I'm going to type in if open parentheses, and now we need to state the condition that we want it to check. So this condition is going to be if the days between our deadline and today is either positive or negative. Now, if it is a negative number, then that's going to indicate that it is a deadline in the future. So we want the formula to display something along the lines of 3 days to go. Whereas if the number that is returned is a positive number, that means that it is a past due date. And so we want to display something along the lines of 3 days overdue. So to add that into the formula, we're actually going to be using the date between property, which looks like this. So if you just start typing date between, you can select it here from the function list. Now this function will simply work out the time between two different dates. So we can use it to work out the time between today and our deadline. So all you need to do is tell it which two dates you want it to work out the time between, and then the units that you want it to use. So it can actually work out the time in various different units. So it could be months, weeks, years, or days. So we're going to be using days, but you do need to tell it that you want it to use days. So the first thing we're going to do is input the two dates that we want it to work out the time between. So the first date is today. Now to add that into the formula, you simply just type in now and then an open and close parentheses. So this is the now function, and that will just input the current day of today, and that will update every single day. So you don't need to change this at all. Then we're going to add a comma, and we're now going to tell it the second date that we want it to use, and that is going to be our deadline. So you can just select it here from the sidebar, and that's going to add it into the function. We're then going to add another comma, and finally we need to tell it which units of time to use to work out the dates. So we want it to work out the days between these two dates, so we need to tell it that. So if you just add in two quotation marks like this, and inside we're just going to write days. If you have a look here, it will tell you the different units that are accepted. But as I said, the one we're using here is days. So this part of the function is now working out how many days are between today and our deadline. We want to test if the number that is generated here is less than 0. So to add that into the formula, we're just going to type the less than sign and equals. So that just means less than or equal to 0 and another comma. So that is the statement that we're going to test. So now we need to tell the formula what we want it to display if this condition here is true. So if it's true, we want it to display the number of days between the deadline and today, followed by the words days to go. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start by typing in the words format, open parentheses, and we actually want it to format this number here that we've generated. So we want it to format the number of days between the deadline and now. So I'm actually just going to copy this using the keyboard shortcut, Command C, and then I'm just going to paste it over here. So that's simply just going to generate the number of days for us. I'm then just going to add two close parentheses. So I need to close off this date between function, and then I need to close off this format function as well. So that's why we need two close parentheses there. And then we want to add on the words days to go on the end. So you simply just want to type a plus symbol like this, two quotation marks, and inside I'm just going to put space, days to go. So it is really important that you add the space here, else there's not going to be a space between the number of days and the words days to go. So there is one other small change that we need to make. So one issue with this is that the date between now and the deadline is actually a negative number. So I don't want it to display something along the lines of -3 days to go. I want it to just say 3 days to go. So what we can do, if you just place your cursor inside of these two parentheses, we can actually multiply this by -1. So if you just type in the star symbol, that means multiply, and -1. If you multiply a negative number by -1, it simply just turns it into a positive number, so it will just get rid of the minus sign essentially. So we just need to make that amendment so that it doesn't say something like -5 days to go. Now we need to add another comma at the end, and next we need to tell it what we want it to display if this condition isn't true. So if the date between the deadline and now is not less than 0, therefore it's a past deadline, so we want it to display something along the lines of 3 days overdue. So once again, I'm just going to copy this part of the formula just up to here, and copy, and I'm just going to paste it here. So that is the bit that is going to format the days between now and the deadline, and in this case we don't want to multiply it by -1 because this is already a positive number. I'm just going to add one more parentheses to close off our format function here, and then finally we just need to add the days overdue text. So I'm just going to add another plus symbol, two quotation marks, and inside we're going to put space, days overdue, like this, and then just add one final parentheses at the end to close off the entire if statement. So that is the basic formula that we're going to use. So I'm just going to hit done, And this is what we're now left with. So as you can see, this is now correctly counting down the days towards our deadline. And if I change one of these here to a past deadline, let me just change this one. So as you can see, this is now a past date. So this is now telling me how many days overdue the goal is. Now, I actually also want to add some styling to this text. So if you remember on the example, it was actually displayed in green. So I think it looks nice if it's bold and green where it says the countdown. So what we're going to do is change the way that this text is styled. So we can do that inside the formula. So I'm going to click on here again, edit the property and formula edit. And here again is our formula. So for the first part of the formula, which is the days to go, I want this to be bold and I want it to be green. So just after the words days to go, I'm just going to place my cursor here just before the comma, and we're going to type dot style, open and close parentheses, and then inside these parentheses we can tell it how we want the text to be styled. So firstly, I want the text to be bold, so I'm going to add 2 quotation marks and inside just the letter B, so that indicates that we want it to be bold, and another comma, and then I'm going to tell it the color. So I'm going to add 2 more quotation marks, and inside you're simply just going to write the color that you want. So in this case we want green, so I'm just going to type green like this, and that is now going to style this piece of text. Now you do need to add this little bit of code after every single element within the formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy up to the parentheses here. Again, I'm just using the keyboard shortcut Command C to copy this, and I also need to add it after this number property here. So it's actually going to be just here after this parentheses. So I'm just going to paste it in there. Now if it says days overdue, I want that to be bold and red. So I'm just going to paste this again after the words days overdue, but we're going to change it to red. So I'm just going to place my cursor here just before the final parentheses, and I'm going to paste using the keyboard shortcut Command V, and instead of green we're just going to change this to red. Now I'm going to copy this one, and again we just need to add it in after the number here. So I'm just going to place it here after this double parentheses. So I'm just going to paste that in so it's the style of bold and red. Okay, so that is now our final formula. So I'm just going to click done, and as you can see all of the text has now been bolded and it is now green. And let me just change this one again back to a past date just so that you can see how the overdue date looks. So this is what it looks like if the date has now passed, so it's red and it says overdue. So now that we have that working, I next want to add a category so that I can categorize each of my goals into different areas of my life. So we're just going to add another property, and this one is going to be a select property, and I'm just going to call this one category. And you can just click on this add an option button to add in an option. So the first one for me is going to be YouTube, because I do YouTube, so I have several YouTube goals, but you can add in any area or hobby that you have. So I'm just going to hit enter, and that's going to be added as an option. You might also want to add something like personal, business, you might have career, school, whatever you're working on. You can just add in a few different categories here, and if you want to change the color, if you just click on it, it will let you select a different color. So I'm going to make YouTube red so that it matches the branding. Let's make personal green and business blue. So now next to each goal I am just going to select the category. So this one is get monetized on YouTube, so I'm just going to select that one as YouTube, and so on. And the final thing that we need to add is a checkbox so that I can mark the goal as complete once I've achieved it. So we're just going to add one final property. It's going to be a checkbox property, and we're just going to name this one mark as complete like this, and that's all we need to do. So now that we have all of the properties in our table, we now want to make this look a little bit better. So I'm actually going to change the layout from this table to a gallery view. So to do that, you can click on the 3 dots here, select layout, and we're going to select gallery. And I actually want to be able to add a cover photo onto each of these cards. So to allow us to do that, we need to change the card preview here. So if you just select page cover, that will allow us to add a cover photo for each card. Now to actually add the cover photo, you can just click on the goal. That will bring up the goal specific page, and if you just hover up here above the title, it will say add cover. That will then add a random cover photo, so you can click change cover, and it's completely up to you. You can either upload an image here if you find one on Pinterest or Google or anything like that. You can also paste in a link if you find an image online that you like, or you can use Unsplash. So I'm going to use Unsplash because it's the easiest method. It's essentially just a free stock photo library, so you can just type something in here. Let's just type YouTube as an example, and a ton of stock photos will appear. So I'm just going to select one that I like. Let's go with this one. Notion will then automatically download and upload that image for you, so it's really quick and easy, and that's now displayed on our card here. And you can also reposition it if you want to see a different part of the image. So I'm just going to quickly add a cover photo for each of these. So this is now what it looks like. Now next I want to display some more information on each of these cards. So to do that, we can click on the 3 dots here, select properties, and here are all of the different items that we've added to our database. So you can actually just click on this little eye symbol here, and it will then add it onto the card. So the first thing I want to add is the category. So if I just click here, as you can see, it's now added onto the card. Next, we also want to see the countdown, the deadline, and I also want to see the mark as complete checkbox as well, so I can just mark it as complete straight from the card. So this is now what it looks like. Next, we're going to add a sort to this. So I actually want the goals to be sorted based on their deadline, so the goals that are coming up soon are shown to me first. So to do that, we can just click on this sort button here, and we're going to sort based on the deadline, and you just want to make sure this is set to deadline ascending so that the closest date will show up first. Next, I want to group these together based on the quarter of the year that they fall into. So if you remember on the example, we had 4 different sections, one for each different quarter of the year. So we're going to start off by turning this database view into our Q1 section. So we're just going to firstly change the name of this. So if I click on here, I'm going to rename our tab and let's just call it Q1. And I'm also just going to change the icon as well. So if you just type in circle, it's going to bring up all of these different circles. So we're going to start with this one, which just shows a quarter of the circle. So that's for Q1. So now we actually just want to filter out all of the goals that are not a part of Q1. So we're going to add a filter and we're going to filter based on the quarter. So we just want to change this to quarter. And if you click on here, we want to change it to is. So the quarter is 1. So in this case, anything that is quarter 1 is in the first 3 months of the year. So it's part of Q1. And that is then going to filter out all of the goals that are not part of Q1. Next, we're going to add some columns so that we can add in the other quarters of the year. So just above the database, I'm just going to type in /2C and select this 2-column block, and then I'm just going to grab this one. So if you just place your cursor here and click on the 6 dots, and we're just going to drag it here into the first column like this. Next, we're going to go over to the second column, and I actually just want to pull through this exact database, and then we can just change the filter for Q2. So I'm actually just going to type in /gallery and select this gallery view block. Now this is going to ask me which data source I want to use. So as I said, I want to use this exact same database. So we're going to select the vision board, which is this database over here, and then it's going to ask if we want to copy an existing view. So in this case, we just want to copy what we already have. So I'm just going to select the Q1 view, but we'll just change the name here to Q2, and I'll just change the icon here as well. So I'm just going to select this half circle instead. Now the only thing we need to do is just change the filter. So if you just click on here, it retains the exact same filter that we had on the first view. So if I just click on here, instead of quarter 1, we're going to change it to quarter 2, and that's then updated the goals, as you can see, to the Q2 goals. And then just below, we're going to add Q3 and Q4. So now that this is a copy of the original database, you can actually just click on the 6 dots here and select duplicate, and I'm just going to do that twice so that we have 2 new views, and they will then display here below. So I'm just going to grab this one and just drag it over into this column, and then we just need to change the tab names here. So I'm just going to click on here and rename, and this one is going to be Q3, and again I'm going to change the icon to this 3/4 circle, and again just change the filter. So we're going to change it to the quarter is 3 like this. And finally, again, just the same with this one. So I'm going to rename it as quarter 4. In this case, we're going to select the completed circle, and I also just need to change the filter to 4. Okay, so that is the main part of the vision board all set up. The final thing that I want to do is add a template so that you can actually set out how you're going to achieve each of these goals. So if you just hover over any of the databases, we're going to click on this down arrow. And if you remember, we set up this default template earlier just to add this icon. So we're just going to actually edit this to add a little bit more information on the page. So if you click on the 3 dots here and select edit, that is just going to bring up this page. So I'm just going to scroll down, and in the space down here, this is where we're going to add in a template that we can fill out for every single goal. So the first thing I'm going to do is add in a H1 heading. So if you just type in /H1, we're going to grab this heading block. And firstly, I'm going to add a goal overview section. Then I'm going to add in another H1 heading, and this one is simply just going to say, how are you going to achieve this goal? I'm going to add a divider under each of them just so they look a little bit more like a heading. So you can actually just type in 3 dashes in a row, and that will add in a divider like this, as you can see. So I'll just do that for both of them. I'm also just going to add a background color. So if you click on the 6 dots here, you can select a background color. So in this case, I'm just going to make it gray, but feel free to pick any color that you like. So I'll just do that for both of them so they match. And I'm also going to add an emoji. So if you just place your cursor here at the start and type in a colon and then start typing the name of an emoji, let's go with a target icon. That will then bring up the emoji, and you can add that in. I'll just add a couple of spaces as well so it looks a little bit better. And for this one, let's do the trophy emoji like this. Then just underneath here, I'm just going to add a bullet point so that I can easily just start typing. And in this side, let's actually add a to-do list. So if you just type in 2 square brackets like this and space, it will then add in a to-do list block like this. So this is where we can list all of the things we're going to do to achieve the goal, and you can then check them off once you've done them. So this is the template. So I'm going to leave everything else blank. So we're just going to hit back, and let's click on this goal as an example. So you'll see the template that we've created here. So it's the one with the target icon. So if I actually select that, it's going to add that template that we've just set up onto this page. And and we can then fill it out for this goal. So if you just give it a second. Okay, so here is our template. So in this section, I'm just going to add in my goal overview. So let me just fill something out. Okay, so here I've written my goal overview, and then down here we can add in how we're going to achieve the goal. So you might want to add tasks or projects or steps, or even just reminders of different things that you want to do. So for example, I could say I'm going to upload 2 videos per week. And as I said, you can then use this to check them off once they're complete. Okay, and that is our vision board all set up. And if you do want to make 2024 even more productive, then I'd recommend checking out my Second Brain template, which is an all-in-one productivity system. It features tasks, notes, projects, goals, and so much more. I'll leave a link in the description box below. And if you did find this video useful, then I'd really appreciate if you could give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, as I post new Notion tutorials like this one twice a week.